I'm here to talk about an update on the SwissMicros line of products. Some of this is very fresh information, like literally downloading new firmware, making slides Friday night. But this is sort of an overview of coming soon. It's there twice. Sorry about that. I guess that's to emphasize it's coming soon. We're going to look at go through the recent releases, the 42 and the 41X. Some interesting new stuff on the DM42, which is formally just released. Their manual, which is a whole new thing that was just announced at IFA. Interesting, if you're not familiar, IFA is kind of the CES of Europe. SwissMicros chose to exhibit there, which initially I thought was a bold move. But Michael said, and I have videos of it, that they were swamped from the whole time through. So people in 2024 going to an electronics show were very interested in calculators, dealers, end users, all kinds of stuff. So that's great news. It was high visibility. They had a real cool looking booth. I should have put a photo of the booth.
To handle their growth and demand? Because if you keep wanting to see reasonable size.
I don't know. I don't know what's throttling what, but I should have put a picture of the booth because it's kind of cool looking. But anyhow, it was very well received and it's very interesting. There's a new web tool that I'm going to talk about in a minute, and then there's something new and interesting to talk about further down. In July, there was an update of the 41X firmware that had some there was an editor bug under weird conditions. You could lose a line. There was some poor rendering in the various 4 and 8 line modes of all the different character sets, and pretty obscure things that most of us wouldn't notice, and other people were losing sleep over counting the months that hadn't been fixed. But one of the big moves, and this is an interesting one, it's support for the Blinky IR module, which was when the 48 series came out with the IR built in. HP also released what's called the whistle printer, the IR printer, and it was very late in the 41 cycle, life cycle, and they chose to put out a module for it that printed to it, and that's colloquially called the Blinky. And this was years after the whole NOMAS period, where that Chu and Richard and so forth had good contacts with the people and established this pipeline for documentation, and things would have flown had it come out then. But this was, 5, 6, 7 years later. So at that point, they put the product out, but there was no means to get the technical information. So it remained undocumented. And because it has an IR transmitter and buffers and things in it, it was not at all clear how it worked. And as it became easier to...
What time frame are we talking about here?
88, I think. Oh. I think. Is that right? Eric? 88, I think? Right about there?
It came out in the summer of 86.
86? Oh, with the 18C. You're right, the 18C had come out, and yeah, the printer came with that one. So mid-80s, when, turmoil at HP.
This is going to come up in my presentation, that's what.
Okay. So anyhow, as things like Clonix and so forth and the CL made it available to just copy any ROM, you did that, but none of these devices had IR, and it was undocumented, and there was buffering and all that. Thomas Fangy, who was referred to in Sylvain's presentation in Europe, when the 41X first came out, he was one of the people who loudly said, does it support the blinking? We said, no, there's no source listings, and without that, it's a huge investment effort for a relatively small number of people. Of all those that have a 41X, and of them, how many have a printer and so forth. So that set him, no, you can't do that, set him on oh yeah, we'll see. So 41X was released without that support, and a year and a half later, he and some of the others that did it jumped in over their head and figured it out and reverse engineered it and got it all working. So that had been published, I think, last summer, maybe fall. And that information was shared, and David was with that, and David and Thomas, turns out, were working on it together and found out that a lifetime ago, they both worked for the same company on the same products in Europe. So there was a bond there, and they were able to get it to work. So we worked pretty hard, and there was a lot of testing to get it to work. And it's one of those things that it's a cool feature because it's cool. How many people are really putting that in their 41X and printing on a Blinky printer after the first week to see if it really works? Not that many, but it's still a cool thing. There was also a release of the DM42 firmware that it had been some time because work on the 41X and the DM42. So we were able to catch up with Thomas's, the latest rev of Thomas's 342. And there's some technical things that had evolved on the platform that better support for the help browser that's built in, and you can actually hear the screenshot beep now, things like that. So relatively minor, relatively small impact. But what I have learned is the most recent releases of 342 have features that, as far as I can tell, there's not a lot of people using because it was hard to find people who had used them on other platforms to test them on this platform. DM42 had been sold in a beta mode for a long time, for 7 or 8 releases, I think. And just, we talked about this last year. It's on the new platform, faster, USB-C, huge amount of RAM, debuggers with variable watch windows, and you can step over routines or step into routines. So, that's something that's pretty much unprecedented in any handheld that I'm aware of. Possibly the 95LX and those, somebody was able to get a debugger to work on, but I'm not aware of it.
71B. Sorry? 71B.
Yeah, both people who use that debugger don't want to talk about it. That was the problem with that. Also, I don't want to, we can if you want to, but let's see, the multi-state support, in a nutshell, I can go to the slides from last year, but all the information in the calculator at a given moment is the state, and that can be saved as a state file. The 32 lets you maintain multiple states in memory, so you can essentially, in addition to just saying, I have a calculator full of civil engineering stuff and another one full of finance stuff, and you can load them and have all that loaded. It also lets you maintain them actively in memory and switch, hang on. So we may want to go there. There we go. So you can have states available here. These are I just got a couple here, but you can basically just hit the F4 button and task switch, so to speak, between the different states. So you don't even have to go open a file, save my current one and then open another file. It's kind of like, in Microsoft Word, you got multiple documents open, you can just touch the tabs, except that there are common areas that all states can see. And then the next step beyond that was to do what's called remote function calling, somewhere here. So the idea being that with the remote function calls, the problem that was trying to be solved is the HP32S2 only had 26 labels, A through Z. So even though the old calculator had this much memory, 26 labels might mean that much program, the new machine has this much memory, but what are you going to do? And so the answer is each program can use its 26 labels, and now a program can call a function in another program. So, and the way you do that, it does say so, here we are. So like normally it would just say execute C to call the C routine, but this is essentially saying execute the C routine that's in the hyper state file. So it's like calling a function in a numbered function in a DLL or something like that. So you just load up your state files, and essentially each state file is now conceivably a library. So the example that I use that clicks with most people is you make a state file called hyper, and you put all the hyperbolic functions in that state file, C for hyperbolic cosine, S for, and so forth, and then you just put that in state, and then you now have all those functions available to an application program, so you don't have to bring all that baggage along with each application program. But in most people, that try get that pretty quickly. But what a lot of people have not figured out is that those things are also available at runtime. So you essentially have the ability to easily add new functions to the calculator. Just, interactive functions. If I want to run hyperbolic cosine on the number, I just say execute, execute, and it comes up and says from which file, and you pick it from the list and then choose the letter. So you kind of like easily creating new functions, just like the 67 adds the ABCD at the top kind of thing. You can add new ones that are available for all the files. Yep.
Which version did that execute become available? Is that recent? 210?
Fall. I was talking about it last year, a year ago now, so it was out. No, I'm a liar. It was out in November, December. Jim?
The method of passing variables between programs, you do it just as registers? Or?
The stack, and I didn't want to go into all the detail, but so the DM42 has, I don't remember, thousands of registers. Is it one? I think it has direct and indirect 1 through 999 and .1 through .999. The indirect registers are visible to all states, and the stack is visible to all states. So you can pass stuff on the stack, but you can also load up the indirect registers. So essentially far more storage than anyone would ever need, though it is one common block. So you might say these 20 I'm going to use for that one, or whatever.
Well, usually matrices is what gets run.
Right. Well, but 32S2 doesn't support matrices.
No, but you can write your own programs for it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's why I'm saying that where the memory can.
Right. Way off, sorry. Guess we did go deeper there. Remote functions, okay, we talked about that. And we'll skip past. The charts are in there, and if you have questions, feel free. One departure is historically for the DM Voyager series and the DM42 and the DM41X, SwissMicros wrote manuals that describe the implementation-specific features and the extensions that are unique to that product, but go get the HP manual for how to use the product. Go get the 42 manual instead of replicating all the content. Those manuals are out there, and Thomas Oken has stuff, and it just wasn't any point. The 32, though, 32 was written from scratch. It is not a ported ROM or anything like that. And broadly speaking, and it's bad to be vague, but I will, the 32S2 manual is not of the same caliber as some of the earlier manuals were, in my opinion, a lot of people's opinion. So the decision we made early on was, and also Amy Anstein had been added on as an employee at SwissMicros. He's a graphic designer and a document person, and he's an artist guy.
Number 3?
3 full-time. Yeah, 3 full-time, yes. And there's also some part-time people that help with different things. Okay. So he came on board, and we went around and around. Well, the manual kind of sucks for this or that or whatever, so we could do this. And that conversation before too long turned into, why don't we just do a whole new manual? Instead of taking the HP one and saying, add this to chapter 4, and then add that. And so it's kind of like, there is no HP manual. Let's document everything in one integrated thing. So including examples of functions and integration and some of these sort of things that also include the extra precision that's available in the DM32, which makes the results different than what you see in the manual. And so there's a whole bunch of reasons, and that resulted in the manual. But then what do you do with that manual? You can make a PDF, or you could print a book.
Oh, boy.
And the decision was made. The decision was made to print a book. And I have some available here for the low, low price of $50. So I'll get them later. I have some. No, okay. I have more books than hands, probably. But there was also a whole bunch of discussions about. Okay, rule 1. Yeah, the content's nice, but you have to be able to take the book and do that and have it stay open, right? Everyone. Got to do that, right? And there are solutions. There's a spiral bind. There's a lot of things one can do. Because of his involvement in some other projects, Amy found something called Autobind, You know what? I'll read the chart. It's called Autobind, and I've not seen it before. And at first look, what? That's not going to work, but it does. It really does. So it's very cool. It's very cool.
Plastic spiral, metal spiral, metal?
It is not a spiral. It's Autobind. I didn't bring it down, but I will bring it down. I didn't want to hand it around because it's mine. Jeff, you in on that? Jeff gets it. He has to restore the 65 that went around the room. To those people who know what that means, it's a DIN A5. I'm not one of them, but there's the numbers. High quality paper. This was completely created in Switzerland. Written, edited, documented, printed, bound, packaged in Switzerland. I have some copies that we established the price before the price was established. So for here, show special, HHC special price is only $50. They're selling them on the website for 64 Swiss pounds, plus shipping, which we're book, you know, if you're over here, kind of thing. So it's way cheaper here now. I came with 10, there's only 8, and I hadn't announced it, so there you go. Amy,
What's the brown card cover?
you'll see. It's
Not like a cereal box is cardboard.
It's literally recycled material. And the theme, and for anyone who's bought, okay, side road, who's bought a SwissMicros product in the last 2.5 years? Packaging is cool, right? Like, it's really cool. It's all recycled material. Michael is very, it's important to him for recycled materials. The booth, if you look at it, is very cool looking, but the closer you look at it, you realize that everything was made with recycled materials, sort of thing. So it's sort of a sustainability message. You know, he's not a tree hugger, don't get me wrong, but he's just responsible. He's trying to be a responsible person with the product design, right?
How old is he now?
More than 10 years at this point.
What's his age? He's in his late
I don't know, but I probably wouldn't say even if I did.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure. Amy was, well, I'll get to some of that. So I've got some of these maybe during lunch or maybe at the end of the day. So if you want one, I'll go. I do have 8, so I'll bring them down and we can do that. The DM42N was also announced at IFA, and the DM42N application-wise is exactly the same as the DM42, but it's on the new platform that the 32 was on. And I have one mistake on here. That is a complete lie. Just eliminate that 2x. It's the same QSPI flash size. And another thing, because it's USB-C, most people assume it's USB 3, but it's not, but it kind of doesn't matter, because even for an entire state file, it takes about 2 seconds. And I finally did some tests with the release software. If you just put a brand new state file in a DM42 and just do a cat mem, it's 75,000 bytes free versus 16K or something, Eric? DM42, 32K? I don't remember. Anyhow, some, for the time, large but relatively small amount of bytes, but a DM42N has 455K bytes, so plenty there. And although at the moment the DM42 is still available, the DM42N is only 10 pounds more, so it's kind of a no-brainer. You know, don't even have to discuss that.
CHF is
Swiss francs.
Swiss francs.
Yeah.
What did I say? Swiss pounds? Sorry.
No. Just CHF is Swiss francs.
CH is Switzerland.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
People in Europe understand that. Bob doesn't understand that, but people in Europe understand that. And I have one, and there's one in the prize table. But as far as what does it do, it does DM42. For people who are wondering, the C47 team has it working on DM42 and probably releasing very soon. And the DB40X, I think is the name of the project. There's a guy from France who is rewriting RPL that runs on a 42. He also has an early version running on this one. Yeah. So that one is really interesting because within this world, the Holy Grail is a 48 or a 50 running on a piece of hardware, right? That kind of thing. This is just sort of a one guy, no one's selling it, so I'm gonna make it, damn it. And he's making huge progress. He's got, in my opinion, he has this similar challenge of the RPL2 project that, what's his name? No, I'm sorry, not RPL2, new RPL, that Claudio is doing, in that some decisions are being made of how one could do it a little bit better with knowledge, looking back in 20 years, but that also breaks the way it used to work. So that's a trade-off that only somebody making that can make, you know what I mean? That's you lose people, but you get people. So those are hard decisions in my opinion. Make it exactly compatible, even though we know it could be better. Yeah, but then the old stuff doesn't work, kind of thing, and then you got to figure out new things. So DM42 sales will pretty much become DM42N sales exclusively pretty quickly. Any questions on? I'm going topic by topic, so if when I switch topics, if I'm going too fast, just holler. I'm rarely accused of going too fast. There's a new tool. If one has new firmware for the Voyagers series, SwissMicros products, there's a Windows executable program that you can use for updating the firmware, which is arguably problematic for the Mac people and the Unix people and so forth. There are things you can do with an emulation and blah, blah, blah. But it's still resulted in an awful lot of, hey, I don't do Windows that way and so forth. So this is experimental. It's not available yet. But this is basically a simple web tool where you still need to have the drivers for the chipset that's in it, and which are freely available and documented, installed on your PC or Mac or Linux or whatever. And the way it works is with the drivers installed, you just plug the machine in and immediately sees it, and it goes into a state ready to accept commands, invisible. And so basically, you're going to put it in, you're going to click on this, and you're going to see COM3, COM4, or whatever this many long character names are under Apple and Linux and so forth. Pick your thing, and then you're just going to click this to program it. And this will let you open a file selector to pick the new firmware and click it, and it updates it. You hit the reset in the bottom. So the procedure's the same. You just don't have to hunt down that weird little Windows program. And this is for uploading and downloading state files. So it means you don't have to keep software around. Currently, the way the state file stuff works is you got to run a terminal session, which people fall into two categories. Cool, a terminal session, I can use SSH, I can do this, I can do that. Or people like, what? So that's why this came about. So that you don't have to find the software, you don't have to be a PhD, you don't, whatever. So this will become live in the coming months. So this is kind of a not exciting, but pragmatic and very useful thing. It reduces the number of people saying, tell me how to do it again. So this will become available pretty quick. This works through Web Serial API, which I assume is something Google created. I might be wrong in that, but it's only supported in Chrome, Edge, and one other obscure browser, I don't remember. And those based on those. I don't think so. I didn't check.
The only person you know who uses Opera?
Yes.
Okay.
And does anyone else here use Opera as their normal browser?
Anybody? I can't see.
Nope. Nope. No hands went up. Doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that 39 other people have bad taste.
When the hackers are beating down everybody else, I'm free.
That's right. They're not going to pursue it. Exactly right. It does not work under Firefox. It does not work under Safari, but it does work on Chrome on Mac OS. We did some tests yesterday to check that.
And you don't need drivers. It's built in.
Yeah, the Mac has the drivers built in. Exactly. Thank you. That was the important point. So kind of not huge thunder, but kind of cool. And now, the least expected thing here. Most people here are familiar with the DM15L, which is the SwissMicros. They have a 15L and a 16L and a 12L and a limited run of the 10Ls, and there's 11Ls, but basically all the Voyager models.
What's your total number of products now?
I don't know.
35?
No, it's not that many, because At the moment, the credit card size models are off the market because that is being changed.
Upgrade.
It's changing. I'll just say it's changing. They will come back. But this product coming out in the fall obviously impacted the demand for the DM15L. Heretofore, people, might be willing to pay $400 for an LE, or they might be willing to pay $200 for a beat-up 15C, or they could get a brand new one from SwissMicros that had more memory and faster and serial port and all those things. But there's no question that the CE deflected a lot of that interest. Long term, it's going to settle out that everyone who wants one wants both. But you see a blip in activity and conversations and so forth. So some thought went into, and it's interesting, some of these, one of the reasons it's great fun to work with the SwissMicros guys is some of the best ideas come out of casual conversations on the channel that we use for not work-related stuff kind of thing. I mean, we're all geeks, so almost everything that gets discussed there was of interest to this kind of group, but it's, sort of other kind of category. So the 15L still has the most RAM, much easier to use USB connection rather than popping up the door and plugging in the cable and all that kind of stuff. And the decoder what the decoder web tool is for importing and exporting what we call state files in the other models. So you can load up your 15 with programs and data and this and that, and then take a snapshot of that and then set it aside or share it for other people. And that's one way, that's probably the easiest way of sharing application programs. And it costs about the same, the 15CE costs roughly the same as what the DM15L costs. So the question is, what can you do to the 15L to make it interesting again? Not interesting again, but to make it more interesting, to regain some of the luster and some of that. What can you do? Dave?
Alphanumerics instead of key codes.
That would be the longest standing improvement that's needed, pretty much, right?
Some more speed because it's 4 times faster than the original C, while the CE is 100 and something.
No, it's not that much. It is faster. The CE is faster for sure. Jeff?
With a clock?
That can be sampled like they did with the 42. Now I know the 42 and the 41.
Exactly. That was rewritten from scratch.
Oh, I know.
Thou shalt not mess with the ROM. Is one of the basic.
Why do it?
The clip is there, it's just not accessible.
No,
Right.
That's not the point.
Right.
I want a data sampling.
I know.
It's like having an alarm clock in the suitcase, but you can't use it.
41, but the 29C with Panamatic.
Yep. But he rewrote it from scratch. So as soon as you're into using the same ROM, and and of all the products, except maybe the 50G, the 15C is the one that you don't want to get into the ROM at all, because.
No, but the guy will do another replica of the 15 went underneath and it's showing on the screen.
He's not using the ROM. He's writing from scratch.
I don't know. I think he's.
No, he's writing from scratch.
You put it into the display drive.
Yeah.
It basically looks for the specific set of segments being.
I think he's rewriting.
Switches it to,
No, well, look at the bugs that are on there, because the bugs suggest that he's rewriting it because mathematical functions don't behave right and so forth. I mean, if he is using the ROM, he's not using it right, which is not throwing rocks at him. He's just starting and bold enough to make it public, kind of thing.
I'm talking about the one that you have to build yourself.
Oh, PX, you're talking about Alex. Yeah. Yeah, there's one on the prize table. Yes, yes.
On the credit card side, on this landscape side, you see the instruction at the top, and he did underneath it.
Yeah. He's interfacing with the ROM, absolutely. So yes, those are the things that can be done. So who shout it out. What does that line mean?
Label A.
Very good.
Good man.
Very good. Of course, we all write programs that start with label A, but even though we all write programs that start with label A, everyone's got to go, the 1 means A, top left, okay, I got it, kind of thing. So you have to go through the decode. Even if you live in that world, except for Eddie, even if you live in that world and do it all the time, you still got to pause and go, sign, okay, whatever. there's limited space
On display.
for the display, and there's also interacting between the emulation layer and the ROM is really complicated because the ROM isn't assuming somebody's talking around it, kind of thing, right? And the ROM assumes it's responsible for anything that happens. And as it turns out, the 15C has way many exceptions to the way, you might think you just talk to the ROM and do something and then grab the result and then put it on the LCD. But there's a ton of exceptions that we'll talk about in a second.
It's called formatting, right?
Well, but you don't have access to that. All you can do is grab it and do something with it. So one answer is to do that.
Yes.
So, show of hands, who thinks it's important to keep the original codes in addition to the opcode?
Oh,
Okay, who thinks it's better to drop the original codes and only show the label? Okay, you guys lose.
In doing that,
No, actually what I want to know is, why do you think, since we can see both, why do you think it's important to get rid of the originals? I mean, one answer is to make the label A larger, potentially. I mean, there's different,
Well, it's an immediate comparison to one of your old programs.
well, for keeping them.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, the argument is
Switchable. One line.
in and out. Yeah, to me, it's like if you're going to enter a program and it's in the old format, you got to have the old format for sanity. Yeah. So I was just curious, if my opinion about that was overwhelmingly wrong, then we'd rethink it and talk. It's not just me, but I mean, that was a consensus of a lot of discussion. And as you can see, when in this mode, the enunciators move over here to make space and so forth. Also, this is not only the view in program mode, this is also the view when you single step. When it's arguably even more important to what you're doing when you're going through. You can see what it is.
besides, when your brain's looking at something, something that's all expressed in numbers and spelled out in words.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
easier.
different parts of the brain kick in for sure. Okay, it's a label, move on. And obviously, once you have two lines, you can show X and Y when you're in calc mode. But also, since there's two lines, instead of seeing just error 0, error 9, whatever,
You don't have to think anymore when you get.
which makes it perfect for me. And there are a few other examples, some of the matrix functions. It's not yet clear how that's going to go. So,
Was there a big deal in terms of cost and constraints for larger display?
this is firmware for the existing products. So you asked a good question. This is not a new product. Thank you. This is not a new product. This is firmware for the existing DM15Ls. So a good question is, they're going to give it away? Right? They're going to give it away? And the right answer to that is yeah. And if you love that kind of thing, show that by taking your 15L and giving it to someone you love and teach them how to use it, and then buy a new 15L for you.
Hey, we all gotta be generous.
And that, short of that transaction, that's a win-win, right?
Yeah.
So, a lot of discussion, a lot of, do you want to start charging for firmware updates? That's a dark road, right? Facebook is quiet compared to the reaction that would happen if you started charging for firmware updates, right?
Oh yeah, the next step down that road is then they sell you the calculator by subscription, and if you spend
Exactly. Then you got to pay the auto manufacturer to use the heated seats. So, thank you for that question. I did jump right past.
Okay, can I quote you in the future when you're behind me?
Yes, absolutely. Some other features in this new build. Oh, you know what? God dang it. People started reading. Everyone started reading. They're not listening. What else might you add to the product? Well, I ruined it by clicking next too fast. The 41's feature of hold down, you click a button, it happens. Hold it down for a little bit, you see a preview of the function
That'd be
name,
very useful.
and keep holding it down and it nulls out.
Yes.
and we put that into the 32, although it isn't discussed much there, even though that wasn't a native 32 thing. And that is here as well, but it's tricky because quiz time, the 15C has three features functions which already do that. Either show you what it is while you're holding it or let you null out. Who knows what those, here's a, Valentine probably knows. But short of that, who else knows?
Which ones?
Yeah, 15 functions. Sorry?
Status, memory status.
5. There are 5. Actually, no, because those are, yeah. But there are others that recall I in the parentheses, recall indirect. When you do that, it'll show you what you're doing, and then it can null out. Recall a matrix will also show you the value of the top, the current cell in the matrix that you're on. So there's some very obscure corner cases that we found the hard way.
Well, now, is the coding to do that, is that an issue at all?
Well, when you're interfacing with the ROM, you make a generic interface that presumably supports all the interactions. And that works, except for the cases where the ROM behaves different than what you assumed. I can't say it's wrong, it's just that there's such obscure cases that you don't even notice. It's not hard to remove them, but it quickly becomes a discussion, okay, who has the list of all the special cases?
Yeah.
And the answer is no one does.
Yeah.
Even within this group, like when I mentioned 2 of them, I saw Eric go, yeah, damn it, that kind of thing. But even within this group, nobody knows those kind of things partly because nobody's using it day to day kind of thing. But there are exceptions, so then you got to get into all the special, always do this except this one, this one, this one, this one. So that's some of the stuff that's work is going on that now. So feedback, is this a cool feature to add? No, people don't care, it's useful? Eric had a thumbs up. Anyone else? Yes? Good? No? Who cares? Move on? Okay.
I really like the 41 feature that did that.
1 second. No, I'm telling Sylvain 1 second. Go ahead. Go ahead. I was telling Sylvain to wait a second.
No. If the feature's there, nobody uses it, you're saying we're wasting something, right? But if the feature's there because people don't know about it, that's another thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it certainly will be documented, and clearly, I'll hand this around. Soon it will be clear that it's already working. This isn't just theory, this is working now. In fact, I was going to hand this around at the beginning, but on slide 2, somebody would have said, hey, there's 2 lines display in this thing. That would have ruined the surprise. Also, nobody noticed the comment at the beginning about, hey, there's 2 lines. Oh well. Bob humor, ignore it. Yep.
Will this be ported to the DM16L and 12 and 11 and 12?
Other than, I want more for free on every device, which is, I understand. Other than that, because it's a ton of work and it turns out it's not obvious, Eric knows this, the Voyagers are not all the same. They kind of look and act all the same, but they are not all the same, the way they behave. So even interaction with the ROM, Eric, big yes? Yeah, there's a lot more differences in the way it was implemented than one might guess. Makes sense, the 11, 12 came out one team, later the 15 came out, different team, later the 16 came out, different team, so they made different decisions.
Random observation here that probably will surprise a lot of people. The 10 and the 12 are actually the 2 that are the closest internally.
And which is probably why the 10 exists at all, because some set of developers said, we can take that 10 ROM and make the 12 ROM and make a 10, 2 weeks work by just turning things off, and then we're good to go, which is probably why it existed. My belief is the 10 was created for optics. The 10 they put out there just so that the other models look better, because it's all optics, because who wants to buy the cheapest version of the premium products, right? You got to have a spread of products, but rarely do people go and look at the whole line of products and say, I want the best, I want the Cadillacs, I want the cheapest one of those, right? That's a conversation that doesn't happen. Yep, Jeff?
Yeah, well, it was actually, I thought talking to Vodek, the 10 was put out for school. That's why it was made cheap and basically introduces the programming at the grade level, like up to grade 10 or something.
But somebody didn't tell those marketing people about RPN challenge there. But anyhow, it obviously came out, I think it's the shortest, if I'm not mistaken, it's the shortest product life of any HP model. So, you know, in the end, it was really just for optics that, you know, I want a 10, but a better one kind of thing. Yep.
At EduCalc, the customer would call in and they'd be talking about one of these 5 machines in the series, right? But the little indicator has fallen off and they don't know what machine they have. So I
One yellow key, 10, right?
well, I wrote internally for training, I wrote a little simplified question, asked 2 questions, and based on their answer, you could tell which one they had.
Yeah.
Got 10 more minutes.
I think there's more to say. Before we move on to giving praise where it is due, any questions on any of that stuff? Feedback? Come find me later and tell me you hate it or love it. I want to thank the guys that I work with on a daily basis. And it's socially and culturally interesting how much cultural exchange can take place in a Slack channel. It's very interesting. I work with these guys in Slack all day long. In particular, in addition to things I said last year, for different reasons, I'm thinking that, you know, Michael wants more. Michael doesn't constrain himself, at least initially, with the realities of how we do it. It's more about what should we do and what's fun to do and what's a cool thing. What do other people want? Because the whole SwissMicros business started because he wanted a 15C and couldn't find them cheaply. That's where it started. He's a 15C user and he wanted one, and he ran into David somehow, who was also an embedded developer extraordinaire, and they, you know, got together, and 2 hours later, let's make a company kind of thing. So he's a geek too. They're all calculator geeks. So unlike other 2-lettered companies we don't talk about, all the people in charge are users and love this stuff.
Yeah, and that's the core thing, that they're not running a business. They love doing, I mean, their whole concept is the product, not the sale.
But the point I'm making here with Michael, and one of the reasons I'm calling it out, is it's not just the products, it's more the, let's not constrain ourselves, at least initially, with how we do it with chipset or whatever. Let's talk about what could be done, what should be done. You know, and eventually you get to the hard stuff, but it's better to have the dreamers so that, you know, I'm not so much like I'm better with taking that and turning it into a schedule, this and that kind of stuff, but it's good to have the people with the vision and stuff, and in a fun way. Like, fun must be part of all of it. David puts up with me, so, right? He puts up with me on a daily basis, so really, really patient. Extraordinary programming, extraordinary skills. One of the guys is kind of like, I need you to do this. I'm sorry, that's impossible. Well, the bad news is I need you to do it in 24 hours. Okay, I'll try. So, you know, we've all met people like that, right? That it can't be done unless there's pressure to, okay, that's a challenge, I'll jump on that. Amy, as I mentioned, is graphics and the author of the book and stuff, and when you see the book, you'll really kind of, you know, on the one hand, it's a calculator manual. So, you know, it's not long creative prose and this and that, but on the other hand, you know, nope, the 14th revision of the fonts are not good enough.
It's like some of the HP manuals had some humor in the background.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Everybody remembers that.
The C6 sailor, you know, whatever, that kind of thing. Some other people to thank, not necessarily for the stuff, I mean, I did talk about these, Thomas Fenge and Mindert, the same Mindert that Sylvain was talking about, were both proponents of having the Blinky in the 41X, and they were both jumped in, and because they were familiar with the project and the printers and stuff, they jumped in and helped out a lot. Joe Horn and Gene, after the 32 reached a mostly mature level, testing interest, like in any product, waned a lot, yeah, sort of thing. Joe, to this day, is testing stuff on the 32. You know Joe, I mean, he finds a new issue, a new problem, let me go try it. So they stayed actively involved. One of the features I talked about last year is on the SwissMicros support site, there are files, state files that you can download for each portion of the book. Like if you go to the original manual on Matrix, there's 27 sample programs and all that. Instead of typing it in, you could just download that. Gene poked all that in and double checked it and all that. So he contributed a lot. There was a ton for that. Raul and Vincent are users from the SwissMicros forum, and I guess the museum forum as well, who had early versions of the DM42 and found really, really, really obscure bugs. And that, the comment to that for people who have done this stuff, it means that they're investing a lot of time, not just finding it,
Yes.
but the follow-up on does this fix it probably takes as much or more time. So they put a ton, you know, there's pretty much unsung, but I think that's it. Questions?
Does it have a clock?
Yes, but it's not accessible.
Any plans to make it accessible?
No, not at the moment. Yep.
How has HP screw up their business helped SwissMicro? Or has it? Or would SwissMicro would have gone
So, believe it or not, the vast majority of SwissMicro's business is not people in this room. I mean, I don't just mean numerically, but it's not geek people. The volume-wise, the most of the business is people who want those products and find out about it. You know, the internet's made it all easier to find those kind of things. So most of those people are pretty insulated from HP screwing up the business. You know, other than, you know, it's not available in America for 3 months after it's available in Europe, and some people question that, but the questioning and discussion ends when they get their toy. So, you know what I mean? So I think most consumers are not as introspective at that level. So I would say any decline in HP licensee activity has not dramatically affected things. One of the obvious ones is the 15CE came out, and all the people wanting to go get a 15C were suddenly going to get the new shiny one. Pragmatically, I mean, you know, I bought two. Everyone in the room bought two, you know, that kind of a thing. Partly collector, partly this and that. Pragmatically for the stuff, if you're really using it, you know, the 15L is probably, well, now certainly is the superior product for a lot of reasons. So I would say not yet, hang on.
So there are people out in the real world that want to use these difficult to use, weird, what is it called, RPN?
Apparently enough to sustain a small company in Switzerland. Absolutely. Well, again, the eye-opening thing for me was, I mean, I have photos of people lined up at the different stations at the SwissMicros booth at IFA to check it out. I mean, if it was an educational calculator show, and those do exist, you'd expect that. But at IFA, where people are going to see Sony this and whatever that and, you know, whatever, I was very surprised to see the level of interest. Maybe it's the first calculator exhibit at a consumer electronics show in 5 years. I don't know. I'm not in Europe. I don't know the market there that well.
Most people assume calculator, what's that? I mean, the younger generation, it's a whole new world for them.
There's photos of a guy in the booth who it was set up with seats, kind of like, so you could sit down and talk with a customer or client or whatever. There's a photo of a guy who was in, I don't know, he's in 30% of the photos there, and he was using one of these, and it just caught his, probably a 15C user, I'm guessing. You know, I have no insight there. But yeah, yes, there are non-geeks. Well, there are people we don't yet know are geeks who are still clamoring to buy this kind of stuff, which is certainly interesting. Yep.
HP has had issues. I assume that the Casio Sharp and TI also had issues, but the keyboard is a critical part of the machine. All right.
Sorry.
And SwissMicro has had keyboard problems.
Well, there were several. If it can't do this list of things, I wasn't party to the discussion at the time, but there was a list of if it can't do these things, then it's not worth pursuing. Hear me out. They had a set of several things that if we can't do this, then it's not worth pursuing this. Probably number one, I don't know, I've not seen that original list, is keyboard feel. And the very first versions, quite frankly, were not great. I mean, better than any other products out there, but you know, over the generations, like once the once the second wave of DM42 products came out, they hit, you know, it's like anything, 1.0, 2.0 better, but 3.0, got it. That's kind of how that happened. So the challenge is on a calculator that's this big, making a keyboard that feels good. There is no good answer to that.
Yeah, but not only feeling good, but actually you press the key, nothing happens.
Yeah, not doubling or tripling or whatever, yeah.
Well, the technology is there. It's how much are you willing to pay for it?
Right.
HP went away from, you know, because of cost.
Yep, Kim, what's up?
Thank you. I was sitting here kind of pondering your question, and a lot of the Casios and others, they do like when you are on also Maxima or the computer programs on the calculator or computer, show the box over box for whole number fractions.
Okay.
A two-line display, well, you can say, you know, go to a 991, and
Yep.
when you do something, when it gives you the answer, it gives you the ability to see that answer because it is actually a whole number ratio. But you can then tell it, give me the decimal fraction equivalent to that. And with the two-line display, we consider the option of when numbers are
We never, quite honestly, never even considered, not like it didn't occur to anyone, but we never seriously considered putting it in because that involves a whole analytical layer in the emulation. You have to, you know, look at the number and assess it and do some of the math that the ROM already did to decide how to display the math result.
I know in the 32, one reason I didn't.
The 32 is a whole different class. Well, the 32 has the fractions built in, the fractions feature.
Do the comma thing versus, you know, because of the two line. If it's something you thought, and
For the Voyagers, no. The CPU in the Voyagers is way lower power than the stuff that's in the Pioneer products.
so that's a technical issue.
Dramatically lower, such that I mentioned the preview, the function preview thing. To make that work smoothly, the machine has to run at the higher speed, the 48 megahertz versus 12 megahertz. It's just there's more to do. Yeah, you got to catch it in time and wait how long before you then show the thing.
The 41 was not well, for its time it was advanced, but in terms of today's technology.
Yeah, but so nothing like that was thought of because there's not enough horsepower to do that well. Dave?
The two-line versus one-line, alphanumerics versus Q codes display stuff going to be configurable at a user level, or is that?
Hold down 1 and on and it comes up in one-line mode. Hold down 2 and on and it comes up in two-line mode. But in one-line mode, you don't see the opcode. You just see the keys. Yep.
One option that would be good is that for all, you see that one option would be to see the key code. No, the key code. Second option to have two lines, but somebody writing a new program could not only to see the alpha, not the key code. It's a new program. You don't need to be compatible with what was before.
Yeah. If you're going to throw out the old one, for sure. And that's the kind of thing you would do to get notice in the market today, kind of thing, right?
You plan to offer those three modes?
For these, no.
Okay.
Chuck?
Yeah. So for a long
Last one. No, one more, so get your hands ready.
For a long time, HP's only sold the 12 with financial model because that's the one that had the continued demand. Okay, it's interesting that the update here is on the technical model, not the financial model, almost in response to HP's new product. Is there any consideration, or hopefully there's some consideration about how they might update the financial model, because I would guess that's a fair amount of SwissMicros business as well.
It's not. I am not. Beginning of my discussion with Michael when I started working with them is never ever tell me sales volume numbers and cost numbers, because I'm way too interested in it and the wrong things could be said at the wrong time. If I don't know, all I can say is I don't know. But I do know this. 95, maybe 98% of people who use the 12C don't write programs. So key code steps
can be said.
don't matter for them. The 11C is the best case to make. Of all the products, the 11C also inheriting this arguably would have the same benefits, but the 11C, again, technically is different. We've looked into it. And they cost the same. So how many people, other than Bob, because you got to have one of everything, is going to buy an 11C and even notice that it's in there? And the answer is probably none. It can be done, but I'm not sure it makes sense. Can you justify it, really? Eric?
Quick answer to Chuck's question. People who want a 12C, they want a 12C. They don't want some new, better, different thing. They want a 12C.
Right.
And they don't care that it's RPM. Don't tell them it's RPM, right?
It has to be approved it has to be approved as well, just like the 35S is for.
Not talking about tests, talking about people that are employed in financial services.
Yeah, the financial business people, all they want is a plain, but well, actually, interestingly, and maybe it's been out there and everyone realized it and I just caught on, in the US, 12C, 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 nothing else matters. In Europe, it's 12C Platinum, 12C Platinum, 12C Platinum, 12Cs don't matter. The 12C Platinum was introduced because the Europe financial market was very about RPN. So the whole purpose of the Platinum was to introduce an algebraic product. They put other things in it, but something I learned last week, there is no 12C Platinum offered from Royal because nobody buys them here. In the current lineup of products, there is no 12C Platinum. I never noticed, proving their point.
Well, the accounting school teachers are teaching on the 12C.
Right. So in this market, the 12C, there's discussion for 12C and that's it, and nothing else. Eddie, go ahead. I lied, one more.
Maybe going back to one of the questions about displaying fractions. Now, obviously, this might be out for the Voyagers due to the power issue, but maybe in the future for maybe for the 32, is maybe you can press one of the soft buttons and you can display the fractions or anything in terms of pi, or if you have square root, if you do square root of 440, you'd have 20.
We don't need examples, but I know what you're saying. But that's a thing that's useful, but in the end, how many more people will buy the product if you do that? Get a list, start writing their names, and then we'll see, that kind of thing.
There you go, you're marketing.
Whoa. I thought we were friends, Richard. I thought we were friends. Thanks a lot. I was going to hand this around at the beginning, but it would have taken a lot away, and I don't want to hand it around now because distracting people from Richard's.
Have them come to you on a...
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you want to come see it and look at it and all that, just come and grab it.
Can you help me?
I can.
Thanks, Bob.